You don't really see homeless people in Japan. The streets are clean, the stations are quiet, and the parks mostly empty. But does that mean homeless doesn't exist here? According to the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, as of January 2025, there are 2,591 homeless people in Japan. This is the lowest number recorded since surveys began in 2003. But with the ongoing rising prices and deepening poverty that so many people are feeling right now, you have to wonder, does this number really reflect reality? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Teriyaki. Right now I'm in a Japanese internet cafe. This place is what's called a completely private room. It's a bit cramped, but it looks pretty clean. Today, I want to talk about homelessness in Japan and the issue of internet cafe refugees. First, let's check how Japan defines homelessness. According to a special law enacted in 2002, a homeless person is defined as someone who habitually lives in parks, riversides, street, train stations, or other facilities without a valid reason. In other words, the law only counts people sleeping in public spaces like parks, streets, or riverbanks. And how do they do the surveys? During the day, local government officials visually check parks, riverbanks, and streets. If someone isn't physically there during the inspection, they're not counted. That's why it's widely believed that the actual number of homeless people is much higher. It raises a lot of questions about how accurately this survey reflects the real situation. Ren Onishi, the director of Moyai, a certified non-profit that supports homeless and struggling individuals, put it this way. Our organization and others that support the homeless have been pointing out for years that nighttime survey shows the number of rough sleepers to be 2 to 3 times higher. Still, even accounting for that, I do feel the number of people sleeping on the street is going down. According to Mr. Onishi, one reason for this decline is the effort of local governments. The spread of support services like outreach programs, welfare assistance, and private organizations working together has made an impact. To be honest, I've noticed the same thing. I feel that I see fewer homeless people in cities or train stations compared to before. Back when I was in elementary or middle school, I remember seeing homeless people when I went to the park during the day, but now I barely see them at all. This is definitely a result of the efforts by support groups and government policies. It's something that deserves praise. But at the same time, just because the number is lower doesn't necessarily mean we should celebrate without any reservations. Mr. Onishi also said this. In simple terms, the number of places where people can sleep, like parks, stations, or riverbanks, has drastically decreased. Especially in big cities, parks often get locked at night, and major development is happening everywhere. As a result, many homeless people just can't stay in those areas anymore. This is a problem that's also being discussed in places like New York. In Japan, people have started calling certain park benches mean benches. Originally, they're just normal benches, but then they add some barriers or change the design so people couldn't sit it for long. Some benches are even designed so that people can't even sit on them at all. I mean, if it's to stop people from sleeping there, that's one thing. But if people can't even sit, then what's the point of putting benches there in the first place? At first glance, measures like these might make it look like there are fewer homeless people, but in reality, they're just being pushed somewhere else. The root of the problem isn't being solved at all. And because of these changes, even as the visible homeless population shrinks, and there are a growing number of what we call the invisible homeless. The term invisible homeless refers to people who don't appear to be homeless at a first glance. They don't sleep in parks or on the streets, and they're not easily included in official statistics. These are people who don't have a fixed home. but instead stay in internet cafes with friends or in their cars. Because they wear clean clothes or carry a smartphone, they look like normal people, and society often overlooks them. This growing group is largely made up of younger people, and is seen as part of a new wave of poverty. In a 2018 survey by the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, it was estimated that around 4,000 people in Tokyo are living without a permanent residence, staying in places like internet cafes or friends' homes each day. One group that's especially concerning within this category is what we call internet cafe refugees. Internet cafe refugees are people who've lost their homes for various reasons, falling behind on rent, family problems, and so on, and now live in 24-hour internet cafes or manga cafes. I've used these cafes many times myself, and I'm actually in one right now. They've got showers, electricity, internet, manga, everything you need. Honestly, they're really comfortable for me. The biggest selling point is the private booth. The booth I'm in right now is clean, and you can even sleep here. That said, it's a bit noisy, kind of, and honestly way too cramped for me to sleep comfortably. Still, the prices are super cheap, and it's a great option for staying the night. But for people labeled as internet cafe refugees, they are not just staying here for one night. Some people have been living in cafes for several months, and some for over 5 years. Inside a tiny booth, they've only a computer, pillow, mattress, and some tissues. The term internet cafe refugee was first used in a 2007 documentary aired on Nippon TV. It was produced by Hiroaki Mizushima, a journalist with experience covering refugee camps. After returning to Japan, he interviewed young people living long-term in internet cafes in Tokyo. His reporting revealed that in big cities, internet cafes had become another kind of refugee camp. After the program aired, internet cafe refugee became a hot topic in Japanese society, and now the issue is surfacing again. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many internet cafes were forced to shut down temporarily. This left internet cafe refugees with nowhere to go. In response, Tokyo and various NPOs stepped in, offering temporary shelter in business hotels or public housing. For a while, it seemed like society was finally addressing the problem. The term internet cafe refugee disappeared for a bit. It looked like the issue had been resolved. But in reality, the core problems, unstable jobs, the high upfront cost of housing, and social isolation weren't solved alone. Now, more and more people are once again turning to internet cafes. There's a growing number of so-called hidden homeless, living in places we can't see. Quietly, but surely, the problem is coming back. Some people might say, well, at least they have a place to stay. They should be grateful. But just because someone lives in an internet cafe doesn't mean they are not homeless. Their situation is still incredibly fragile. If they get laid off from a part-time job or get sick, they could easily end up on the streets. And at this point, many people might be wondering, are internet cafe refugees just needs? But the truth is, many internet cafe refugees are actively working or looking for jobs. So then, why do they still live in cafes? Staying in an internet cafe usually costs around 1,500 to 2,000 yen per night. That adds up to about 60k yen a month. With that kind of budget, it seems like they could just rent a cheap apartment, right? Well, one of the biggest reasons they can't is the way Japan's rental system works. In Japan, renting a place means you have to pay shikikin, deposit, raking, key money, and the real estate agent fee. The deposit alone can be 1 or 2 month rent. Key money costs about the same. It's basically a thank you payment to the landlord, a traditional from post-war Japan. On top of that, you also have to pay insurance and various other fees. Even within 200k yen in saving, it's often not enough. Then there's the application process. Japan is known for its super strict rental screening. If someone has a history of unstable work or mental health issue, they often get rejected by landlords or the guarantor company. I personally think Japan's employment system is also deeply connected to this problem.
A 2018 survey by Nikkei found that around 15,300 people in Tokyo were sleeping in internet cafes each day. Of those, about 4,000 were considered to have no fixed address, and more than 70% of them were doing unstable work like dispatch or day labor. This kind of non-regular employment doesn't just mean lower income. Contracts are often short-term and easily cancelled at the company's convenience. Plus, there are no bonuses or benefits like a full-time employee would get. It's hard enough to live on, let alone rent a place. So why has non-regular employment increased so much? The turning point was the burst of the economic bubble in the early 1990s. When the bubble popped, companies' profits tanked, and they had to cut labor costs. They couldn't maintain the lifetime employment or seniority-based systems that Japan was known for. So they stopped hiring full-time employees and started relying more on cheaper contract workers. That shift never reversed. Now it's just part of the system.
At the company I used to work for, I remember more than half of the employees were non-regular staff. I think this normalization of irregular employment is one of the key reasons the Japanese economy has been stagnating for so long. With more non-regular workers, average wages go down. That weakens consumer spending, which slows down the whole economy. Wages don't go up, even for full-time workers. And that's created a system where nobody's income is rising. That's why I believe that reducing non-regular employment and helping more people get stable, full-time jobs will not only ease the insecurity of people like internet cafe refugees, it will also help revive the Japanese economy. So how do people even become internet cafe refugees? Most of them never planned to live there in the first place. It starts with the temporary stay, just tonight, or just for this month. And they before know it, it's every day. At some point, it turns into their normal.
There are many different reasons why people become internet cafe refugees, but among younger individuals, one of the most common causes is family trouble. Many young people leave home due to abuse or constant conflict, and instead of ending up on the streets, they choose to hide out in internet cafes. Take this girl, for example. She's just 15 years old and currently lives in a net cafe after running away from home. Her name is Moka-san. She's what people in Japan often refer to as a Toyoko kid. This term comes from a gathering spot near the Toho building in Shinjuku's Kabukicho district, known locally as Toyoko. It's a place where vulnerable youths, mostly in their early teens to early 20s, gather, often seeking a sense of belonging or simply a place to exist. This girl's story is heartbreaking. Due to domestic violence, she hadn't been able to live at home since she was in 4th grade. Since then, she's been drifting around Shinjuku, living a life not so different from an internet cafe refugee, finding temporary shelter in cafes, public spaces, or on the street.
モカちゃんでも今ずっとネットカフェで生活してるじゃないですか。カスタマーって1日泊まると大体いくらぐらいなんですか？
私の場合はいろんな人とシェアしてるから全然もう本当の一部屋小さい部屋なんですけど、
毎回友達と入ったりするんですか？
あ、そう。本当は一人じゃないといけないけど同伴バレないんで、それでみんなでお金分けてみたいな感じで。
ちなみに一泊したらおいくらぐらいなんですか
？1000円ぐらい
？1000円ぐらいで一泊できるんですね、友達とシェアで。とはいえ毎日1000円かかってたら、まあ、月で3万ぐらいにはなるじゃないですか。食事とかもそうだし、そういうお金ってどうしてるんですか？
いや、爆発してます。
何歳ぐらいからそうやって生活してるんですか？
中学校1年生から
じゃあもうこの3年間ぐらいずっとそういう感じなんですね。で、モカちゃんは小学校4年生の時、なぜまず歌舞伎町に来たんですか？
お兄ちゃんがホストをやってて、私両親はすごい嫌いだけどお兄ちゃんだけがすごい好きだったから、お兄ちゃんのいる場所に行こうと思って歌舞伎町に行き始めてが始まり。
じゃあお兄ちゃん今も歌舞伎町でホストしてらっしゃるんですか？で、そのお兄ちゃんがいるところってなるとホストクラブですよね。
あ、そうです。
じゃあ小学校4年生からホストクラブ行ってるってこと
いや、
ですか？
行ってはないですけど、お兄ちゃんが仕事終わるまで、この辺でブラブラしてたり。
でも小学校4年生、お兄ちゃん仕事終わるの1時とか2時じゃないですか？
いや、もっと遅いです。朝方とか。
どこにいたんですか、その間は。
カスタマとか、
カスタマ？
ネットカフェみたいなものとか、ホテルに。
一人で入ってたんですか？
いや、その時にはもう、なんか自然と仲間がいたんで。
小学校4年生ですよね。
そうです。
お兄ちゃんは、お前帰れよって言わなかったですか？
言わないですね。両親が、そういう両親だってことを知ってるんで。
家はどちらなんですか？
家は千葉です。
さすがに親御さんから何してんだって連絡あるんじゃないですか？
ないです。どうでもいいと思う。
一度もそういう連絡ないんですか？
ないです。
お父さんもお母さんもいらっしゃるんですか？
はい、いますけど、どっちも本当の親じゃなくて。
どっちも本当の親じゃないっていうのは、
本当の両親がいて、離婚して父親についていって父親の再婚相手と結婚して、その再婚相手と離婚して再婚相手の方についてって再婚相手とそのもう一人の再婚相手と今暮らしてます。
じゃあ本当のお父さんとお母さんはもう今一緒には住んでないんですか？
知らないですね。どこにいるかも何してるかも。
それが嫌だったって感じなんですか？
それも嫌だし、家庭内暴力もすごくて。
In Tokyo, there are countless people, just like her, who have lost their place in society and ended up living in internet cafes. They are what we call net cafe refugees. But let's be clear, they're not lazy. They're not people who didn't try hard enough. All it takes is for one gear in life to fall out of place, a job loss, a family breakdown, illness, abuse, divorce, mental health struggles. And when it happens, the dominoes fall fast. Before you know it, you're pushed to a place you never thought you'd be. A place that's hard, sometimes impossible, to return from. Now many people might say, if someone's struggling, they should just apply for welfare. Japan has a safety net, right? That's what taxes are for. On paper, they're not wrong. Yes, Japan has a welfare system, and technically, it's supposed to be available to anyone in need. But here's the truth. Very few people can actually reach that system, especially those who need it most. To apply for welfare in Japan, you need a registered residential address, a Juminchu. But if you're staying night to night in an internet cafe with all your belongings in a single bag, you don't have that. So even though you need help because you have no place to live, you can't apply because you have no place to live. It's a cruel paradox, and it locks countless people out before they can even begin. Even if you somehow manage to apply, there's another hurdle, a process called Fuyoshokai, a dependent inquiry. In this step, the government contacts your family and asks, can you support this person financially? But for people who left home because of abuse, neglect, control, or manipulation, this isn't just awkward, it's terrifying. It means revealing your location to the very people you escaped from. It means risking being pulled back into the situation that broke you. For some, it could even mean physical danger. So they are forced to choose, get help or stay safe, but not both. And then comes the biggest barrier of all, shame. In Japan, accepting welfare still carries a heavy stigma. Many see it as admitting failure, a loss of pride, something to be embarrassed about. You see it in news headlines, in online comments, in casual conversations on the street. People who could work but don't. Leeches living off taxpayer money. freeloaders. But the truth is, welfare is not a weakness, it's a right. A promise the government makes to every citizen, that if you fall, there will be a net to catch you. Still, even knowing that, many can't bring themselves to ask. They are afraid of what their parents might think, afraid of what society might say, afraid of looking pathetic. So they stay silent, even when they qualify, even when they're hungry, even when they're sleeping in a chair at a 24-hour cafe. This is the reality. Yes, Japan has welfare. Yes, there are programs. Yes, support exists. But for the people who need it most, it's hidden behind a wall of paperwork, rules, fear, and shame. They can see the door. They can even see the key. But there are too many locks. They don't know which key fits. And after a while, they stop trying to open it at all. They stop asking, stop believing they're allowed to ask. I don't even know if I'm allowed to want help. I don't have the courage to speak up anymore. And that's how net cafe refugees and Japan's invisible homeless continue to multiply in silence, trapped not by laziness, but by a system that was never designed for people like them. People often say internet cafe refugees are beyond help, and that's because they fall into the category of invisible homeless. As I mentioned earlier, invisible homeless people don't have an address. They live in cafes, cars, or friends' places, but they're clean, they have smartphones, they look just like anyone else, and because they don't look homeless, they often don't get the help they need. Take Mr. A man in his 20s. He lives in an internet cafe and has no permanent address, but his clothes are clean. If you saw him walking down the street, you'd never guess he was technically homeless. He works 3 days a week for a staffing agency and earns about 120,000 yen a month. But things like smell and dirty clothes are huge problems when it comes to keeping a job. If he smells bad, people avoid him. He might not even pass an interview.
So for him, staying clean is literally a lifeline. No matter how broke he is, he has to spend money on basic grooming. But someone like Mr. A doesn't show up in any official homeless statistics. That's why the real picture is so hard to see, and that makes it harder to take action. Yes, maybe the official number of homeless people has gone down, but maybe they've just become invisible. The person sitting next to you could be sleeping in the next cafe tonight, and if we don't try to see them, we never will.